All right, everybody, welcome to Sunday Nights with Pastor Neil. We're glad to be in the house tonight. It is pouring down rain and thunder and lightning, so if you hear that, that is picking up it on the microphone.
Yeah, pray the power don't go out.
Yeah, for real. If it does, we'll see y'all next Sunday. But in all seriousness, though, we're going to dive into a new kind of topic tonight, and we had you guys send us some stuff, and you guys sent us a bunch of stuff, and we appreciate it. Questions, comments, keep those coming. We'll keep checking them. We're going to do a couple weeks on this. We'll kind of see where it goes. We don't really have a set.
Right.
This isn't like a series we're doing. It's more like a instructional type thing that kind of some things got laid on our hearts, and then it kind of compounded with some things that happened this week. And I heard a few podcasts, and I'm going to get into that in just a second. But I was listening to a podcast of Dr. Ravi Zacharias. And if you don't know him and you've never heard of him, he passed away this week, and he was
incredible.
One of the greatest apologists
Yes.
For the Christian faith of all time. And he's great to listen to. Go back and listen to his stuff, read his sermons, read his books, that kind of stuff. But he was telling the story, and I've heard probably 6 or 8 podcasts of his that he's used the same story. So I thought maybe in honor of him, and tonight I was going to read this on this thing, and we'll kind of kick into it after that. But he said one time that Holmes and Watson were out camping. They were doing some work together. They were out camping, and they may have had a few too many drinks around the fire that night, and so it got late. So they said, we're going to go on to bed. So they go and lay down in the bed, go lay down, and they're halfway through the night. They're woken up, and they say, Watson says to Holmes, he says, look at those stars. Like, what do you see? What does that mean? And he said, well, I mean, there's few things that it can mean. He said, if you take a look at it astronomically, the stars and the galaxies and these things are great, and these huge worlds that we don't even know and we haven't explored. And said if you take it into the meteorology side of it, it's super clear. We're seeing all these stars, and so tomorrow we should have great weather for tomorrow when we're on our adventure. And he said you can even take it to the theological side of it. And he says, you've got God that created all these stars and all these galaxies and all this things that we could just see, and we see this out here, and he says you think of that, and you think of how the Lord can just provide for your life and how great you are in this vast galaxy. And he says, that's what it means to me. What does it mean to you? And he looked at him and he says, Holmes, you idiot, that means somebody stole our tent. So anyway, I always thought that was a stupid story, but I've listened to Dr. Ravi Zacharias, and he's told that story a few times, and it's always funny. But in all seriousness, he went on to say some of the greatest things, and I think it kind of kicked into what we're going to talk about over the next couple weeks, because he went on to say we as Christians and as churches, and we have gone, and he was talking about how in the 80s he looked back in the 1980s, he saw this trend of these churches, and we're building these mega churches and these big churches, and we're getting all these people into church, and we're bringing all these things in, and we're starting all these great programs, and we've got churches with coffee shops and smoke machines and lights, and we're doing all this great stuff, and we're bringing in young couple after young couple after young couple, and they got kids, and we've got great kids programs and all this stuff. He said, but at the end of the day, when all those people walked out of church, if you asked them what it meant to be a Christian or what it meant to live a holy life, they couldn't tell you one thing. And that really hit me of, we've focused on all this stuff of how do we get people into church? How do we get people into church? And that's such a great thing, is bringing people into church. But can we focus on the day-to-day, how to live a holy life day to day? And it's a struggle.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's days that you don't know what you think of all this stuff. So really what we're going to sit down over the next couple of weeks is say it, and how to live a holy life. Right. And that's kind of where we're going to take this in the next few days. Next few weeks. But before we get started, I know Pastor Neil, he's got a couple announcements. We've got a couple things going on. So check out these announcements, and then we're going to dive right in.
That's right. And also, go to YouTube and just search Ravi Zacharias. There's one clip. He's in like a college setting, and there's this kid that stands up and questions God's existence. And I think he's actually an Islamic kid. But they get into this discussion. And the thing is with what amazed me with Dr. Zacharias was that he's so intelligent, but yet when he would talk, it would be like, Okay, now I understand that
That's right.
because there's some people with that doctorate degree that when they talk, you're like, I ain't got a clue what he's talking about. But he broke things down, and I watched as he had this interaction with this student on that little clip off of YouTube, and he was like, utterly amazing, and all that was just like off the top of his head kind of thing. So I challenge you, go to YouTube and just search Ravi Zacharias. In fact, you do yourself a favor to read any book he's got out too. Incredible mind. And in fact, there's sometimes that people die within the faith that okay, they're going to be missed, but there's people that can do. I'm not sure who's capable of stepping into the shoes and replacing that.
Yeah, I thought about that too.
Great man of the faith that's gone.
When I found out that he died, I thought, who can be the next?
That's right.
You always got great evangelists and great preachers and that kind of stuff, but he was just so smooth.
He was way beyond that. Absolutely.
It was a whole different world.
And his demeanor was one of almost like the loving granddaddy kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, even I'm thinking he is basically rebuking and tearing the student down, but at the same time, the student was like, Thank you,
sir.
Yeah, and you're like, wow, incredible gift.
Right.
So check him out. Please check him out. But the announcements real quick, let me hit these. Don't forget to check out the cut rate grad events that they got on their Facebook page. Todd Touchbear's got those up. The Moo and Brew. In fact, I think I got it right here. They've already had the first part. Crestwood High School did theirs this past weekend. What is the date? I don't even know what the date is.
24th.
So Lakewood had theirs yesterday. The 25th, you'll have St. Anne's, Sumter Christian, St. Jude. Thomas Sumter will be the 26th. Wilson Hall will be the 27th. But check them out. They got there, the free milkshake that they're giving away. Support them. There's also a place that if you would like, contact Todd Touchberry. You can make a donation to help do this. This is just something to boost morale for the 2020 graduates. My heart breaks for them. And speaking of, make sure that if you are a graduate of Bethesda Church of God, college or high school, make sure that you get your information on our app. You can go to the church app, the Bethesda app, and there's a heart kind of thing that you can click on right there that has the form up. That will be on Sunday, June the 7th at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock. We'll have our graduation service. We'll recognize our graduates. And then that afternoon, we're actually having a train, and they'll be setting up tents, that kind of thing, and celebrating our graduates. And this is a big milestone in their life. So make sure, graduates, you go to the app, or you can contact me, text me, or email me, and I can get you one of those forms to get filled out so that they can get turned back in. It's easier on the app because there's actually a place to upload your grad picture and your baby picture. So we got to get the video, but I've got to have that info from you in order to do that. The information is due by this coming Sunday, May 31st, which is our first Sunday back to church. Service is starting back Sunday, May 31st, which is Pentecost Sunday. So that's a little exciting about that part. There'll be 2 services, 9 and 11. Make sure that you're back into the house. And let me hit something real quick with that. I saw a thing written on Facebook from Kevin Wallace. Yeah. I love Kevin Wallace, but shout out to Pastor Kevin Wallace. He's an incredible minister, and his delivery with the sermon is amazing. But he actually wrote, and he was talking about, there are a ton of people that say church is not biblical. We don't have to go to the church. That's kind of true, that we are the church, but he said there's also a place of what we forget is that they were in one mind, one accord, and one place. Yeah. Do not forsake corporate assembling under the banner of church. The building doesn't mean anything. We are the church. That's correct. But where 2 or 3, even God said, you got to be together. So you can't sit home and expect God to bless and move or whatever. We're starting back on May 31st, but check Kevin Wallace's article out on Facebook. It's incredible. So there's power in community. So May 31st, Pentecost Sunday, we've got a chance to come back together as the full body of Christ. I'm a little excited about that. I can't wait to see some of y'all ugly faces that I have not seen in a while. So make sure that you're here. Also, make sure Wednesday night, 8 o'clock, you tune in on Facebook and our YouTube channel to see everything that's going on there. So we're going to jump into what we've talked about. A bunch of you have actually messaged me. Well, I say a bunch. When I say a bunch, I mean like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of you. 10 of you have actually sent, 10 have sent it in. And out of those 10, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 of those are adults. Come on, guys. I asked a question about 3 characteristics that you would think of holiness. And we're going to hit some. In fact, we've got this thing, and it's a pretty lengthy scripture. We're not going to read all of that, but our text is coming from Mark chapter 9, beginning with verse 33, and it runs through chapter 10, verse 12. So I encourage you, after we log off, for you to read all that and check into that. But out of the ones that were sent to me, there's actually, out of the 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them mention the word humbleness, or being humble, or humility, or some form of. And that's actually what we're talking about tonight.
That's where we're starting. And that's the thing. And as this series, I don't want to call it a series, as these topics kind of go on, what we're talking about and living a holy life is not, I think we get caught up in times of, we've got to do these grand gestures.
That's
we've
right.
got to, I can't really have a holy life until I'm preaching to 10,000 people on stage. But, this preaching maybe to 2 people on YouTube, man, that ain't really, whatever. That's not cool enough. I want to do something where everybody can see that man right there is holy. But this is day to day, day in, day out. How can you live the holy life? And that's going to cover all kinds of things. I mean, and all kinds of topics and all kinds of, we're going to start with humility tonight, but and that is could go on forever by itself.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And we hear all this stuff and we talk about all this stuff and but that's where we get into is right here, comparing ourselves with others.
Right.
And that's where I think we try to say, I'm going to live a holy life, but I'm going to do it. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it in this big grand gesture.
Yes.
And I want everybody to know that, man, that guy.
Look how humble I am.
Look how holy I am, and look how humble I am, and I want people in the church to say, man, that Eric guy, he sure is. He got the holy life down. This and that. I don't want to be the guy that's behind the scenes doing the day-to-day things that gets things done. And that's where a lot of us fall short because you don't become Dr. Ravi Zacharias.
Oh, heck no!
Over just because you decide to.
That's right.
He was an older gentleman, and he started out fairly young in his preaching, but he also put his time in to get to that point. You don't become Billy Graham, just because you decide to start, doing a YouTube devotion or something like that. And that's if you're doing that's great, and continue on and do that kind of stuff. And that's the little things you got to do.
Right.
But don't expect it to just be the biggest podcast on Christian life right now because you decide to do it.
If you have spent any amount of time with Pastor Al Sims, I would say 80% of his life is a cut up. In fact, my kids, they both of them have grown up always just knowing Pastor Sims. And the big thing that Haley would say sometimes is, I don't know if he's playing or not, because he's always playing like that. And he's got that thing that he always says. He says, I am so humble. In fact, I'm the humblest person I know. That kind of thing in joking. Yeah. But, the actions of a lot of people actually speak to that joke.
That's right.
And he and I have had this conversation not long ago about now all of a sudden it's like everybody thinks there's something because they got a Facebook channel or a YouTube channel or whatever. Yeah. I'm a Christian star, that kind of thing. That's and he said it's actually comical at what some of them think. I looked up definition, and I'll be honest, I asked quite a few people this question: what is holiness to you? And it all comes down to this: it's a life set apart to God. Whatever that brings in and whatever you need to take out. It's just a life that is set apart to God. Now, I'll be honest, I grew up with an awful lot of people that the definition of holiness compared to them was very much screwed up. Yeah. As in, you know how many people I know that are mean as snakes, but they don't believe in wearing pants. Yeah. The men always wore a coat and tie. And even on playing softball or whatever at camps, they'd have on long sleeve shirts and, girls can't wear pants. And got into no makeup, but they were some of the meanest people I've ever met in my life. But yet they turn around and shout in church, speak in tongues and run hey man, that kind of thing. Right. And you look at them and so much manipulation, so much hidden crap that was there. And that's what they tried to make me believe was holiness.
That's right.
And I'll be honest with you, Eric, in growing up in that, I didn't see a lot of humility. Yeah. That was the one trait that none of them really had in common.
And I'll take it a step further. that's your generation. You know, when you were coming up, that's the generation before you was that generation where you had to deal with that. You couldn't, you know, practice baseball on Wednesdays because that was the day of church, and you know, but you know, you could be mean to somebody and you could do
exactly
this,
right.
you could do that. But then I'll take it on to my generation, where I think it was almost like an overcorrection. Like y'all's generation said, okay, we're going to get rid of all that crap because we lived with that stuff and that's nothing. So now it's like my generation comes in and it's almost like, hey, you owe me the coffee shop out there, and what if I'm coming to your church, what is it going to do for me?
Right.
You know, like, okay, you know, or I'm Mr. Big Shot so-and-so, and I do this and I do that. So if you want me to come to your church, how are you gonna affect
what you gonna give me?
That's right. And it's almost like instead of taking everything out, we've added all this stuff to coddle my generation to get them to church.
That's right.
Instead of just saying, look, these are the characteristics you live by to have that holy life. And now it doesn't mean you're extreme on this. You can't wear short sleeve shirts and you can't wear makeup and you can't wear a baseball hat.
Right.
To this, you know, anything goes. We don't care if, you know, if you're living in a sin lifestyle, we're not going to call you out because we don't want to hurt your feelings and kick you out of church. And, you know, if you're doing this and you're doing that, we're going to try to make a program where we can fit you in here or fit you in there to try to, you know, so it's almost like we've gotten the middle point is where we need to be.
I agree.
We went from this end to this end, and we're not balancing it out. And that's kind of what we want to get to is say, hey, these are the things that you can do day to day to get over that hump and to say, look, I'm never going to be Mr. Perfect, holy man, but I want to try to strive to do these things because this is what Jesus told us to do, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think that's where we're, like I said, your generation is coming from the everything was wrong. To my generations, everything is right.
Yeah.
So now we got to find the balance of what is right and not necessarily what's right and wrong. People know what right and wrong is.
That's right.
But
that's
what
exactly
are the characteristics of, you know, you've got to have confidence to be a Christian.
Right.
But you've got to have confidence with humility.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's where we've got to find this balance. And you've got to have things. You've got to do things. You've got to have programs to get people into church.
That's right.
But that program is useless if it's not teaching those people to go out and build the kingdom.
Yep.
You know, so I mean that's where we've got to figure out what is.
In fact, I'll say this: I think that's one of the issues that from my observation, that the church world struggles with the most. The discipleship.
Yeah.
You know, we'll pray with you at the altar till you pray through, and you got to. So glad you're part of the kingdom. God bless you.
Yeah.
You know, and now you're like, whoa, wait.
Now what do I do?
What do I do now? Yeah, and I think we miss some of that. And I'm not sure why, but we do. It needs to be corrected. But I think a lot of the issues, you know, back to the humility part thing is we've got way too many that are just not willing to admit that they have issues.
Yeah.
You know, I've said from the start, there's nobody can dispute this. I've said it from right here in this pulpit. Then I've said there are a lot of days I have no clue what I'm doing.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. I have never been one to say, well, I've been a youth pastor, and I've been a youth pastor for 21 years. Yeah. And you know what? I tell them when I help talk to youth pastors, I can't tell you what to do. Yeah. But now if you need a 3-volume set, you know, I can tell you what not to do, you know, and there's a lot of that. And this whole story of the humility thing tonight, Jesus and the disciples, they're taking a little stroll and they're walking in. Back then, they would walk in line behind the rabbi. And it wasn't like a disorganized bunch or gang. You know, I kind of almost picture one of my favorite movies. In fact, if I had to pick the favorite movie of all time, is Tombstone.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
one of my favorite scenes is when all of a sudden they start walking down the street, going after him. You know, you got Wyatt Earp right in the middle, and then his brothers and all spread out on the side, and you see the black guys, or the guys in the black suits with the trench coats walking down the middle of the street. This is kind of what I picture. Right. Here comes Jesus and the disciples. Right. They're in line. It says they always traveled organized. Why is that? I don't know. Yeah. But I thought, wow, that's amazing. Maybe it showed even some discipline, but they're walking along, and there's this discussion that happens. Now, I dug into some of this, and it says that the Greek word here implies that there was more heat than a light. It was like a strong discussion. Right. You know, you ever caught your parents arguing, and you say, "Y'all stop fussing," and they're like, "We're not fussing, we're talking."
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, "You're screaming." I feel pretty confident that's fussing. You know, and then they're having this strong, heated discussion. And of all the topics they could have picked to talk about with Jesus, they're talking about who's the greatest.
Yeah.
Who's the best? Who's the best disciple? And Jesus in the natural heard this, and I'm sure he did, but his discerning too. So he waits until they get to the house to actually address this conversation that they had. Then the rebuke starts with actually a pointed question that they're kind of uncomfortable to answer. It begins with verse 35. And he sat down, he called the 12, and he said to them, "If anyone desires to be first, he shall be last of all and servant of all." Right then, you know good and well they're confused. Now, wait a minute. If I'm going to be the best, I got to be the worst?
Yeah.
I'm confused here. So he's already thrown them off. So he starts with this, and in this portion of Scripture, Mark chapter 9, verses 33 through chapter 10, verse 12, please read it when we're done. He addresses holiness, basically. And he gives out these 6 characteristics for them. 5 of them he kind of gives privately to the disciples. Now, my first thought was this. If he gave those privately to them, but then he commands them to go. These are basically points for discipleship as well.
Absolutely. It works in both ways. And that's kind of where we wanted to go with this topic, is teach you or give you these characteristics of how to be holy, but that's not necessarily just for you.
Right.
That's for you to take out and say,
absolutely,
live these characteristics out so that the people around you can see that, and you don't even have to do any discipleship if you live these characteristics.
Exactly. Out. That's right.
And that's the thing is there's times where you can come in and the humility is one thing. If you want to find the person in your office or in your school or in your thing who people will actually listen to, it's not the guy up there beating the tables talking about how great he is and I'm the greatest student and the greatest athlete in this high school.
That's usually the turnoff.
That's usually the next things out of his mouth are people are going to say, whatever, I'm not listening to that guy. But the guy that sits there and takes it all in, or the girl, I say guy, but the guy or girl that sits there and takes it all in and says, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but here's the real lesson.
Right.
That's who gets listened to, and that's where you get it. It says right, the opposite of humility is pride. Right. So, and you can talk about pride till you're blue in the face, because everybody struggles with pride.
That's right.
I don't care if you're the meekest, child that sits in this room. Right. At some point,
there's a pride thing.
There's a pride thing.
Absolutely.
And it's not just pride among maybe an outward pride, but there's the inward pride that you struggle with as well. And we laugh all the time about our boys, and they're a lot of the same. They do not struggle with self-confidence.
Oh, heck no.
I mean, they think they are God's gift to ladies, God's gift to sports, God's gift to the schools, God's gift to the church. I mean,
Tucker's I can't help it.
He's sitting right down there right now thinking, yeah, that's about right. That sounds about right. I mean, it's like just right now. But no, in all seriousness, and that's not necessarily right. They don't do it in a boastful. No. We pick on them and give them a hard time. But that pride can get in the way sometimes. Absolutely. Because you think, hey, I mean, Tucker's been humbled on the athletic field some. Yeah. He came from, being kind of the hot shot out of, the youth leagues and that kind of stuff. Right. And getting up there and and he was in the 8th grade playing on JV basketball. And there were some kids out there that were 10th graders. Yep. And they put a little hurting on him this year.
That's right.
So, he got a little humility there. So, and that's the thing. Their humility and it's always going to come around to get you.
That's
right. No matter how prideful you are, and no matter how good you are, it's going to come back and get you. I mean, there's just no way around
it. The word humility actually means the state of being humble, and in here it's actually comes from the Latin word humilis, which means low. What is ranked low by others, and seeing that's one thing I think that where we mess up, because they hear phrases, kids hear phrases about take pride in your work.
Yeah.
Take pride in the way you dress. Take pride in this. And so I think there's an amount of confusion sometimes that get in. And see, people use the word of themselves and think, associate with themselves. If you describe yourself as but a humble editor, or I'm just a humble whatever, sometimes they're actually trying to promote themselves out of that. So we got trying to find that balance. And I heard this story and I thought, have you ever been in a room with a group of people and suddenly you start smelling something? Finally someone says, okay, somebody must have stepped in dog crap. Check your shoes. And you grab your foot, you pull it up to see the underside, and it's you. And you know how it is with dog crap. It gets inside the traction of your shoes, and you just can't get it all out. If it's fresh, it's always that orangish color. For some reason, you get that thick part off with a stick. You beat the shoe on the ground outside, and then you think enough of your friends to leave your shoes outside because it's still there. Well, here's the thing. These guys are sitting there. They're still bragging about how great of a disciple they were after they just walked through camel and donkey crap. Yeah. You've been traveling all this way. You had to step in something that stunk. So they're sitting there trying to tell them how great they are. And I've seen this. I've seen guys trying to tell me, man, the ladies love me. Dude, you got something in your teeth. Yeah. That kind of thing, or a booger hanging out your nose. That kind of thing. And so I can imagine Jesus, this is Jesus. I can't imagine, especially, sometimes I picture Jesus as being sarcastic. So can you imagine Jesus standing there and he's listening to these guys try to tell how great they are, all the while thinking, I'm Jesus. Who are you trying to outdo? That kind of thing. Right. Who do you guys think you are sitting around with turds on your toes? You have no authority to tell me how great you are. There's nothing great about that. But instead, Jesus actually did something better. He showed the disciples where they really were. Now imagine the reality check when all of a sudden Jesus rebukes you. Yeah. See, it's one thing to get fussed out by your friends, by some of your family or whatever, but it's a whole nother level when mom and daddy starts fussing at you about that same thing. That's right. Well, now we go one step further when God starts doing it. So here's Jesus that says that pride can never be proven. Pride is always being tested. You may be the leading scorer for one game and then get nothing the next game. And we've got to understand. In fact, this way, how many of you actually remember the number one song from MTV for 2019?
I have no idea.
Yeah. You can go. Who won the Super Bowl 5 years ago? There's some who can tell you, but
you got to think about it.
You got to think about it for a minute. Who won the NBA championship 9 years ago? Who won the World Series 4 years ago? You hit those and you're like, oh wait a minute, no, that was and it's just right. Unless it's your favorite team, right. you kind of miss some of those. So here's the thing: things happen. And we have to have a reminder of it to even think about it. But you move on for the rest of the world. See, pride forces us to prove and prove and prove again. If you're a very prideful person, you're constantly not just in a competition and war with everybody else, but even with yourself. Yeah. And you never can really prove anything because you're always going to have another test. If you're in a band and you have that hit song, but then you don't have the next one, you become the one-hit wonder, and that's kind of insulting a little bit. That's right. I love to watch stuff like that on TV. VH1 used to have this series called Behind the Music. Yep. I remember they did this group one time called A Flock of Seagulls, and it was and everybody's like, who is that? But it was a group from the 80s. But they had this one song, and I ran so far away, and everybody knew that song. It was like the number one song for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was like the hottest song of the year. The only one they had. In fact, the guy said now he does stuff like, he's still in the music industry, but he was somewhere in Florida, whatever. And they were saying, well, what about the song? He said, I hate that song. It killed our career. Yeah. What do you mean? It was your number one song. Doesn't matter. It killed their career. So the thing is this, if your worth is all tied up in just what you do, then the Bible says that your fall is coming. Pride comes before fall. That's right. You will get hurt. When you are defined, when everything about you is just in what you do instead of who you are, that's right. We're going to be in trouble.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. It translates to everything. It's not just the sports are for us are the easiest ones to to think. You can be the leading scorer, and you could be the greatest of all. I mean, you could be the Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time, and we're still talking about him. But Michael hadn't played in 30 years.
That's right.
So I mean, he's still making money, but it's like he's not, and being as competitive as those guys are, it still eats him up that he can't go out there and be the greatest. He couldn't walk on the court with the superstars of today, and take them in a one-on-one game.
That's exactly
he
right.
might could take some of them.
That's right.
So that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter how good you are at what you do.
Yep.
When that is your only defining characteristic,
that's right,
is what you can do. Eventually, you
what
can't
happens
do that
when that's
anymore.
gone. That's right.
Like I said, it doesn't matter what it is that you do. You might be the smartest person in the world. Well, eventually, your mind is going to go, or you're going to pass on, or you're going to whatever, and then there's going to be another smartest person, and there's going to be another, and you can leave legacies of things that you that you do over the years. You might
that's good,
but you can't be that if your whole your whole thing is your ability to do something. That's all you've got. Then eventually you don't have that anymore.
Right.
So at some point, where do you fall in, and where do these characteristics come in? And these are when you're talking about living a holy life. These are things you can do from day one to the last day you walk this earth.
Right.
And that's things that they can't take away from you. They can't take away your humility.
That's right.
And that's something that no matter what happens, you've always got that, or you've always got your characteristics of other things. All these other characteristics we're going to get into. Yeah. Those are with you forever.
Yep.
So,
I mean, I love it. Pride will fool you. It's only in you. Imagine you're playing in a baseball game. The only one who came to see the game is you. Every time you step up to the plate, you cheer yourself on. You yell, "You can do it. Oh, good eye. Way to wait for the pitch," or something like that. How stupid does that sound? Yeah. But that's basically what pride is. Pride ends up making us feel bad about ourselves because we're our number one fan. We're sometimes our only fan. And the self-exalting of look at me, I'm the greatest, or whatever. I think it was Kenny Rogers that actually had a song out about his mom was watching him play ball in the yard with himself, and he kept throwing the ball at me. He couldn't hit it. And she was like, "Oh, you need to work on your bat." And he said, "No, Mom, I'm an incredible pitcher." Yeah. That kind of thing. And I thought that's funny, but there's where some people, I'm still the best. Well, what about, and they still find a way to tell you that they're the best. What humility is it's not necessarily tearing yourself down. No. And I think that's another misconception that's been brought out. It's not downplaying your gifts and your abilities. God's given all of us talents. Yeah. I don't have talents that Eric has. No. I don't have talents that Tucker has. We all have a talent and ability. And we have to realize that to admit that those are from God, but the problem arises when it makes us think that we are better than someone else. A good quality in one area of giving makes us forget about the things that we need to work on. Humility is right thinking about yourself. That's right. Of realizing that, you know what, I am good at this, but I also know where this talent comes from.
That's right.
I know where I need to work. If we're honest with ourselves about who we are as a total person, when we're honest and right thinking, then we'll be more open and accepting of others. Yeah. And there's sometimes that our pride want to let us accept something from somebody else.
Yeah, not only that, it won't let us accept the person themselves sometimes. You think about, you've got these friend groups that you develop in school, and that's great. I'm all about having a great group of friends, and there's friends that I have nowadays that I went to high school with that I'm still friends with today. Right. But there was a lot of kids that we didn't accept into our friend group because they were different than us.
Exactly.
And we were too prideful to say, you know what, we don't care that the other group over there thinks we're weird because we let this kid into our group. Right. But then I look back now, and I've been out of high school 20 years now, and I see people that I would have had nothing to do with in high school, but I'm friends with now, and I'm thinking, man, I wish we would have been friends 20 years ago because we would have been great friends.
Look what we lost.
That's right. You know, so I mean, that's where pride will get in your way of you look back on things that you've done, and you think, man, I've wasted all this time, and I wasted all this thing because I was too prideful to accept that person, or I was too prideful to accept help from that person when they could have helped me do things that I could have been building on to this point.
Exactly.
And I had to do it the hard way rather than doing it the easy way
Right.
and letting them help me. You know?
Right. I don't want you to misunderstand the fact of having the self-confidence. In fact, there's some that I think have a God-given gift and ability that are amazing, that they allow the lack of self-confidence to even give that to God.
Yeah.
You know, if you're an incredible singer, let it rip.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
but we've got some say, I don't want to, or get so nervous about it, and then, I don't want people to think that I'm cocky, or I don't want people to think that I'm prideful in this. But my thing would be this: God gave you that gift and that talent. When you use it, you're not blessing anybody. You're blessing God anyway.
That's right.
So when you're giving that back to Him, I don't care whether it's painting or whether, Phil and Adam are amazing.
Yeah.
Phil Nobles and Adam Williams, when they start painting stuff, they are amazing. I can't do that.
No.
I wish I could sometimes. That's incredible. But they are very gifted at that, and they do tons of stuff around here. That's giving that back to God. That's not about bragging. That's about saying, look, I recognize that I do have a gift. Yeah. I know where it comes from. It's not me being prideful by doing that. It's me saying, God, here it is, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability.
Absolutely. And that's where you've got to find that. That's what we were talking about earlier, that balance of
yes,
this on, this end. We got to find the middle balance of saying yes. I mean, I fully believe that God did not bless me with an amazing singing voice because I would have not been humble about it.
Right.
At times I think, man, I wish I could sing and I wish I could sing.
Right.
But then I think about if I was up there singing, I'd be doing it for myself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
What do you mean?
I mean, that sometimes you don't get certain gifts because you couldn't
Right.
use it for what you, but like you said, with Adam and Mr. Phil, they can do these things and you, half the people probably wouldn't even know it because
they don't
put
exactly
it out there, but they
That's
use what they have and they're confident in what they can do because they know when you ask them to paint a mural on this wall, they can come in and paint it.
That's right.
And they can do it a really good job, but they're not bragging about it. And they're not doing it in a look at me kind of way.
Right.
And that's the thing. People that can sing and people that can do these talents and all this stuff, and even with book smarts, people that are smart, man, use your smarts for something.
Right.
Use it for something great. Use it for things. Athletic ability. That's people get that.
That's right.
That's so a lot of that is made into cockiness, but.
Right,
I know people,
right.
And you, I think you had the opportunity to meet Heath Esslinger.
Yes.
This past
Yes.
summer, or doing some knowledge stuff.
Yes.
One of the best athletes I ever was around when we were coming through school. I mean, he was a state championship wrestler,
Like,
time
that's
and
what I
time
thought he
again.
was a wrestler. Yep.
College wrestler, U.S. I mean, he qualified to be on the U.S. Olympic team, and
Yep.
he got hurt, and some things happened. But he took that wrestling ability, and I mean, he had he was the best in our area. I mean, just hands down, weight class didn't matter. He could whip anybody to step on the floor. But he took that and used it later in life. Now he deals with FCA and he does these things with coaches and youth ministers and that kind of stuff, and he teaches. But he used that. People listened to him because he was such a great athlete, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, he has a platform now because of that. So there's not you can take anything and use it as your platform.
That's right.
To get people to, just if you might be the best computer person in the world, you can use that ability to help
point people to
do
Christ.
that and use that to say, look, man, I was blessed with this talent, but I can do this and I can do that, but this God gave me this talent. I'm not, out here doing it just to do this. But
see, to me, that's the key. If I am very, very gifted at something, that's fine. And in fact, Jesus, it's written in Psalms. It's my desire to set you up on a footstool of glory. In other words, I don't care if you're famous.
Yeah.
People say, oh, they just after fame and fortune. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Nothing's really wrong with that. But if that becomes your goal and your only thing, then it's a problem.
That's right.
But if I use all of that to point people to Christ, that's exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
And that's why I don't have an issue. Well, I can't believe Toby Mack makes that much money. He done lost the fact of what ministry's about. And there's so many of them that don't have a clue. One thing about being on the Winterfest board, I get to see what some of them actually get. And I've even heard comments about, well, they need to book this group because they're about the praise and worship. They're not about all that marketing and all that money. If you knew what that joker was getting to do for a 45-minute set at Winterfest, you would change your mind. That kind of thing. And I don't have a problem with that. But if I'm pointing 17,000 kids in an arena to Christ, I've earned every penny of that money.
Absolutely. And money's not, money's not, if money's
No.
not the end goal.
That's right.
I mean, people say that, well, you should, and you should live a humble life.
Right.
You shouldn't have nothing in that. No, look,
Right.
God doesn't say you can't have
No,
anything.
not at all.
And you can't make money, and you
Right.
can't do well, and you can't live a good life. But
Right.
you need to use that.
Well, I'll go so far. I've actually heard this comment. I had a conversation with a man who lives in Sumter. It was in one of them little media wars, and I'm like, dude, I got to get out of this or whatever. But he wouldn't let me out of it. But and it was somebody here, but actually brought up the fact of the you can't have money, or you can't be in a big church and have a healthy relationship with God. And that was his comment.
Yeah.
And he was straight up. That's not holiness, is what he told me.
That's right.
You have to compromise your holiness if you're going to have a big church, or you got to compromise your holiness if you're going to have money. Sir, that is incorrect.
Tell that to Jensen Franklin.
I ain't lying. There's a ton of people I know going to hell that wear 3-piece suits, and I've never seen them in a pair of shorts.
Absolutely.
I don't care. That's not about, the holiness is not what I do. It should be who we are.
That's right.
It's a lifestyle. And the thing of wrapped up even with this humility comes from when we point people to Christ. It's not about to have confidence in what you're doing. You should have confidence in what you're doing. In fact, it says do all things for the glory of God. That means the best of my ability.
Absolutely.
Well, if I'm the best singer,
Yeah.
it's going to be the best song you've heard. I can't. God gave this talent to me. So that's what some miss is your humbleness is more accented when you're giving what you have to Christ.
Yes.
Whether it's from the stage or whether it's the one that all you can do is cut the lights on in the room and get the room ready. Be the best one of those you can be.
Yeah, because it's all needed.
Absolutely.
And, we talk about the body of Christ, and you've heard these stories all the time that you can't operate you might be the fingernail of the finger, and somebody else might be the voice coming out, but without that fingernail, you hit that thing right there, they ain't gonna be able to sing because the finger hurts. That kind of thing. You've heard all the comparisons and all that stuff. That every piece of the body is important.
Right.
And so if you've got a job that you do it well. Do everything
Right.
well. I mean, and that's not and it's not just about do it to try to make the most money you can. But if that comes along with it, then that's part of the blessing that you got.
That's
with
right.
it. So take the humility, take the pride, take these things. We're going to come into some more characteristics as we go on, but take these things and try to apply to your daily life. Like, how can I be more humble?
Right.
And be careful when you pray that prayer, because you're going to get something that may humble you.
That's exactly right.
But when you do get humbled, just know, this is from the Lord. This is
Right.
now I can see, and I think that's happened to a lot of churches through this pandemic. And I'm not saying that the Lord, put this disease on us to humble churches,
right.
But I think a lot of this stuff has happened because we had these churches that operated with nothing but all these programs. Now they're preaching to a camera, and they realized, hey, we didn't need all that to get people in. People are still watching us. Mm-hmm. People are still, and if you're doing things, the characteristics of holiness as a church and as a Christian, if you're doing these things, the numbers will come.
Right. That's right.
You don't need the big things. Now
I've always heard you provide quality, the quantity gets there.
Exactly. And so that's where we're trying to go. We're going to give you this these characteristics to say, hey, put these into play, and you're not going to be able to do it every day.
No,
you're going to struggle with anything we tell you for the next couple of weeks. You're going to struggle with. We struggle with it every day.
Yep.
And things. So don't get discouraged, but also know that, hey, man, I can continue to work through these characteristics, and I can continue to become more holy and not try to be Mr. Holy, but I can live a life that I can be proud of, that I can say, Lord, I'm doing my best here,
right,
and be blessed from that. So take these next few weeks, take these things, go back and watch this stuff, read through Mark chapter 9, verse 33 through Mark chapter 10, verses 12. We're going to be working out of that text for the next couple weeks. Read it a couple times, read it over, read the backstory behind that. like you said, they're walking through, you know, at this time, and this is where it starts. They start with this, you know, and I feel like sometimes when you get that first characteristic, that's probably one of the most important.
Right.
Because the
That's
Lord's,
right.
they started this story with this characteristic.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Well, Jesus' life started that way.
That's right.
I mean, you went from a king to
That's right.
born
Everybody,
in
a
feed trough.
And God had every right
right.
to ascend Jesus as a king with purple robes and mansions, and that would have not been wrong.
Right.
But he did it in the most humble way you can imagine being born, to say, this is important. So take humility, take this topic and take this characteristic and say, I realize this is an important step. I'm going to try to put this into play. Put this into play this week.
That's right.
Try to be more humble. Try to be more, and sometimes that's even just being more understanding, you know, of people, of, hey, I'm not the greatest gift to whoever
That's
or
right.
whatever. You
That's
know,
right.
I can be a better person.
Yep.
So take this stuff and really focus in. Keep chatting with us, texting Neil characteristics of things you think about, like, hey, this is what I struggle with. This is a characteristic I struggle with. And let us know, because it's not to say, oh, so and so struggles with that.
No, not at all.
So and so struggles with that. It's to let you know, hey, we struggling with the same thing.
Exactly right.
You know, everything we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks is stuff that we struggle with daily. So you take pride in knowing that you're not the only one.
That's exactly right.
That's going to struggle through this. So we'll close out here tonight, but don't forget, Wednesday nights, 8:00.
Dysfunctional series.
We're still on that series. We're just getting into that. So be here Wednesday night, 8:00. I know it's getting kind of old watching all this stuff on TV.
Yep.
Trust me, we would much rather be sitting here talking to you guys
Ooh,
face to
yes.
face. But we're going to continue this series. Going to continue doing this on Sunday nights, where we can get out to you guys and continue doing this kind of stuff. Hopefully we'll all be back in church with the youth and the kids and all that kind of stuff as soon as possible. It's a safety thing. Realize that we're not dissing you guys and all that kind of stuff.
Not at all.
It's a safety. We're trying to make sure everybody can get in. But
Right.
church is starting back. Be at church Sunday morning.
Yes,
Do
please.
yourself a favor. Come to church. Come to the 9:00 service, because it's
In
not
fact,
going
I
to be
think
as
the
crowded.
video was put out about how to enter and all that from the pastor, right? Make sure you check that out. Yeah. It's on the app,
on the app,
all the
on
social.
the church's Facebook page, the church's YouTube channel, all that stuff is on there. Check, they'll get you in and out. But know that we're ready for you guys to be back in here, but we're going to continue to try to do what we can. But don't get discouraged by having to watch on Facebook and having to watch on YouTube, because that's what everybody's doing right now.
That's right. That's right.
We still want to be around you guys. We still want you in here at this point. But as soon as that's back, we'll be raring to go. But be here at church Sunday morning. Be with us on Wednesday nights through this. Watch the church's streams. Watch the kids' streams. Miss Becky's doing a great job with the kids. You got younger kids, let them watch that. We're doing everything we can to get all this stuff out to you, so don't forget all that. But Wednesday nights, 8:00. Next Sunday night, we'll be back in. We'll be talking about our next characteristics. We'll get into that.
Yep.
But we're going to put out some stuff during the week. Make sure you're following Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube channel, all that stuff. Follow along on that stuff. Comment on that stuff. Anything we can help you guys
Talk
with,
back
please
to
let
us.
know. Yeah. We that's a kind of a younger generation. Nobody wants to talk back,
Right.
and everybody's But I promise you, we're not doing this to pick on you. And
No,
we
not
don't
at all.
want you to come in with these things. We want you so we can help you. Anything we can do to help us, we're here
Right.
for it.
That's right.
But you want to close us in
Yep.
prayer, and we'll
Let's
call
pray.
it a night.
Father, we thank you for your love, your grace, your mercy. God, we thank you for the gifts and talents that you've given to each one of us. And God, I pray that you would help us to always point people back to you, to point people to Christ. Lord, we love you. We thank you for all things. It's in your name we live and we pray. Amen. God bless.